The basis for ethics is a call person of life in a certain way, so it requires a concept of the subject who can answer this call. However, the only ethical claims that can be ignored are ones that fulfill the subject's constitutive instability. Two words. First, the I think is not the I am. I think there's a term of the subject's merely capacity, but thinking only affects subject as it being in time. It's not a transcendent feature. Transcendent subject fails because differentiation through time causes the ability to lose. The I think implies the I am, but nothing tells us how is undeterminable is determinable. Not determinable in the form of transcendent difference, not the informal external difference, but internal, which establishes proper relations. Undeterminable existence only determinable the spontaneity, which I am conscious. The I think cannot be understood as a substantial being as effective. Passing the I think cannot be must be added to the self. The time signifies a fraction of an I and the I passivity itself. The opposite part question, the ethical claim. There's no way to negate any other ethical theories, so it's binding and no true ethical theory can against the demands of the instability of the subject. Second, the subject is engaging in some desire changing process that compels the centric affects and effects. Semantic desire is not a single drive assembly of affects and effects. Subjects are differentiating outcomes of desire machines. The unconscious entails the insufficiency of subjectivity in terms of stable identity, rational subject, or so ideal authentic self, unconscious perspective. It's contradicting subjectivity, changing and transcendent as a process of irreducible self-identity. Subject expresses itself in it becomes a new other brain interaction. The politics of stable subjectivity makes critique impossible because it takes empirical habits of features and treats that as a model. A stabilized set of habits is empirical, which gives no place for contestations as a postulate and a hypothesis. Raleigh. All relations determined about power and empirical normality to transcend norms, which shows genetic background can be ignored as long as normal human is white male, middle age, there's no need to ask by history that's right. It derives that person. Imminence is a constant transportation difference. Singularities refers to it. Part 2 is linguistic. Subjects are constructed to a language. I refer to as a specific person, but ignores specific things, especially because every individual utters I. Your subjectivity is marked in the discourse of identification ignores. But this that thing is essentially apart from the generic category, but linguistic intelligibility is colonizing us as a given conception of the subject. Assuming every utterance takes place in the social impact, it will inflect in the imperative struck with the redundancy of anonymous murder. Every word is spoken with these words and all others. Every word is related with the one that says I is non-expressive. Only linguistic market dealing with the body's jurisdiction, personal agency creates a high context by orchestrating the encounter between the content and expression bringing the I. Now there's a certain view of language that is dangerous stabilizing as order words don't view the operation of language does as an officer to hold not a communication but being positioned as subject relationship between the power and the state to lose. And guess what? Every word carries a judgment and function of code when language is we can understand non-linguistic point of departure because language does not operate between what is something being said. We can all call order words in relationship words. Order words are not concerned commands only, but social obligations of relationship between the statement and the act of the statement, but not within any other order words redundancy of the statement written receiver precede redundancy when it's because we must think we must act one consistency of act imminently to language in order to redundancy statements of constitute order words. Thus this comes first. All other ethical theories assume the self face of the linguistic determinations of what order words establish social constraints on the subject that is colonizing as different memories. Thus the standard and rule about rejecting order words. That's key to education. Majority of school rights is anti-ethical and Carlin and while the subject is made to conform with the system to produce education and function during regular life according to its goal. Majority of people education takes fundamental motive for the production of information, common sense, and education brings diversity in general. The formula of the same word is found in our common sense and potential for political action dealing with the preferred standard. Additionally, for general understanding of the relationship between norm subject in the world are insufficient for ethics because there's a gap between discursive regime and real subjectivity. Only structures of affect is in which the subject conception of difficult to it's correlative is the thing we can fit a stable structure. Say, 13 sexual produced by bodies. The minister of their political work trying to negotiate these terms in their own ways. Affect theories was knowledge of bodies outside of theoretical domains, reason, cognition, language, affect theory matters. Wherever else, where sovereign consciousness has a self-significance of domain and subjectivity. Affect optimism emerges from something you desire to actually obscure your flourishing fantasy, political project. Affect theories misleading discursive between the bodies presence. It's not a sandwich of text and knowledge applies to discursive descriptions, but a full sense in which political circumstances emerge. Optimism blinds our bodies to fantasy condition for the possibility may not be the condition for our own emergence. Affect theory offers a resource political thinking relationship not in discourse. Cut the analytic under that. Overcoming anti-blackness cannot begin with a fixed political status. Only the apolitics of lines of flight and becoming can discount the structures of whiteness. Klein 17 flattening the black social heterogeneity as a result of political ontology and macro politics with the closure of lines of flight and Mars multiplicity of possibility which provides a flow that breaks an outside political ontological sedimentation resistance of the macro political blackness can be reduced to antagonism rather than dynamic force that which lines of represent this inaccessible political was a positioning but this parentological black fugitivity called the question of blackness within the political ontology of the black life within the imminent field of becoming moves in resistance to appreciate struggle, appreciate structural whiteness, gender political ontology, inclusion for the struggle, which becomes a pragmatic movement against the anti-blackness, optimism emerges are congruent by pragmatism, which enables a form of description which immediately practical representation of ontological reality does not take the precedent over the creating new concepts of lines of light that should be judged in terms of concrete effects with the specific problems that conjures pragmatics and marches that same into conditions defines macro-political pragmatics in this way are all about maps against macro-political, what precludes any ethical theory of material balance should have a conception of ontology relations whiteness which lines by proves productive form. Now, all I advocate public ecology universities are not restrict constitute free speech. One is on institutional action, rather critical activities. The link between speech growth and majority and creativity. If you would like me to do, if you want to differ from regular free evaluating office, you'd like me to on that for me, I would spend implementation. Now, from first speech goes, any term good or bad speech, that's why you place a restriction, but restriction there's some natural and properties of the speech instead of determined speech should be harmful based on common sense established by the speech is people would affect seems to be a basic speech code established a code subject and generalized to a common sense Williams. Common sense presupposes universal fact recognition and make judgments about categories and assign them to things to be sent back. Reckoning there's a vicious cycle that sets identity as a condition for love and no possibility to approach different identities as presupposes and necessary for truth, that conception restricting of imagination restricted in terms of definition of truth. Second, a restriction on speech and ontological contingency of speech in favor for elevating the ontic's contents. This stabilizes any view of discourse as the epitome of theory subjectivity. Look loud. Democracy presupposes the place that the power remains empty. We need a particular force to occupy the empty spaces of power and to identify with a certain visibility of its own contingency is inherent to democracy. One has the two advances, certainly concrete at the same time. As for contingency, those aids and visibility was advancing. Aims of the character by including ontological difference between the ontic's contents and elevating ontological dimensions on these contingency of democracy. Underview. First, one area theory, meta-theory, legitimate. Otherwise, the one that can be infinitely abusive than the video, which is one area theory, meta-theory, checks infinite ability to overwhelm the affirm, meta-theory. Also, job with the one area theory, tends to crunch one area insufficient wimble substance theory. So, the one area, so the apples no ability to reason harm. Also, the no tune or RBI decides incentivizing them to do abusive stuff in front of a bunch of RBIs. So, the auto win. Second, fairness is voter because debate is even requires equal access to competition. Fairness controls the controlling to all laws. At some point, the engagement ensures that people are able to test the legitimacy of the position, which is key to real debate. At some point, test the legitimacy of the position. You don't know if the argument is true, if there's an epistemic violation. You didn't read Devin's card.
My laptop is just dying. I don't know where the charger is. Let's see if we can get it to work. Ready?
Yeah.
So, Ari, do you identify as a white man?
Yeah.
So is that adhering to a stable notion of identity?
Wait, what do you mean identify as white man? I'm more than just a white subject, but
Yes.
part of me is that I have characteristics that prove I'm a Caucasian male, yes. But it's not my essential identity, obviously.
Sure. So what is your essential identity?
There is no essential identity. The Deleuze evidence at the top of the app.
But you still recognize that you're embedded in whiteness, correct?
No, whiteness affects me as a process through time.
Whiteness affects you, or you
Yes.
are whiteness?
No, the Deleuze evidence will warrant that whiteness affects the subject as a process, or things like other characteristics
So
of the subject
how does
affect it
whiteness
through time.
affect you, Ari?
Like, what do you mean?
You said whiteness affects you. How?
I was just giving an example.
Sure, but
Okay.
explain to me how.
Like whiteness has certain like things that make me want to act upon the world, but there's other things that make me want to act upon the world.
So
The
whiteness
Deleuze evidence
makes
warrants
you,
that there's no
whiteness
essential.
makes you want to take action. Makes you want to act upon the world. What does that mean?
Yeah, like things or features of the subject affect the subject, or have the subject affect things through the process of time, but they cannot be irreducibly defined. They cannot irreducibly define the subject. For instance, the feature of myself as like a white male subject, or the feature of myself as like
So
a
you are
white.
a white male subject, but you're more than that.
Yes.
Cool. I'm just curious, how do you feel about Rachel Dolezal?
Sorry.
Rachel Dolezal? Have you heard of her? I don't know how to say her last name, but basically she's the woman who is white, but she headed African American organizations for a while by putting makeup on her face to make her look black. I was just curious, what are your thoughts on her? How do you feel about
I'm
her?
not really well read on it.
Sure. How do you feel about someone claiming that, a white person claiming they can occupy another identity?
Just abstractly, I don't know. You have to be more context than some random scenario. I don't want to trap myself there.
What do you think about identity?
What do I think about identity? Identity can be essentially defined by a certain feature.
Identity is not definitive of a certain feature.
Yeah, or it can be irreducibly defined as
Okay,
a sort of
so-
essential characteristic. Yeah.
Why not?
Well, okay, so that's the Deleuze evidence. That's one. I can go through the two warrants. The first is the semantic or the Deleuze evidence. Second is the semantic evidence. Deleuze evidence warrants there's a process of time that fractures the subject. I can explain from to where Deleuze came from. So Descartes believed, I think, therefore I am. Correct? Descartes believed that the subject is merely a thinking
Sure.
subject.
You said that, so like whiteness cannot explain what you explain because it shifts over time, correct?
Not
Did you say
shifts
that?
over time, but there's different features, like our reason, for instance, would affect the subject over time. There's different characteristics of the subject or features of the subject
Sure.
that
So
affect the subject over
whiteness
time.
exists as a structure, correct? But it's fluid over time.
Sure. Wait, structure is a structure that affects us. My point is, we cannot be irreducibly defined by the structure of whiteness. The subject, or like blackness, for instance, or any race per se, or any feature of the subject.
Okay.
The subject is affected by that, but not.
So in your plan text, do you protect constitutionally protected speech?
The advocacy is a critical interrogation of the resolutions of principles.
Sure,
So yes,
but
I
your
would
plan
encompass.
text said that you will enact constitutionally protected speech, correct?
I will not fiat it, but the app defends that, yes. Interrogation of that concept, yes.
Starting prep now.
Alright, the recording missed like the first 5 seconds of the app, so we're gonna have to redo that at some point.
I can actually do it if you want. You can edit it.
What counts as an order word?
An order word is a view of the operation of language that has the risk of stabilizing us.
What does that mean? What's an example?
For instance, like when an officer yells halt.
Is it any like command?
What? No, not any command, but any command that subjects us in a locked position of power. For instance, like when the officer yells halt, that's an instance more than just an act of communication. Rather, it's an instance of putting the subject in like a fixed position of power in relationship to the state.
Something that locks in a position of power.
Something that stabilizes, yeah. The whole top of the solution of the app proves why instability is key.
Yep.
And that is a way of proving that. You good, Paul?
What?
You good? You seem like you're dying.
I mean, yeah. I haven't been given a long time.
Okay, 241. Ari, can I see your stand?
Yeah.
Sorry, the file like saved in the wrong location. Just send it. Let me know when y'all are good.
I'm good.
1 sec. Yep.
Ready?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be really cool if I could wake up one morning and suddenly decide that I am no longer a woman of color, but rather that my identity is unstable and that I can identify as a blob that isn't definitive by the way I look and by the way that my flesh is marked with my brownness and blackness? How much longer do people of color have to prove their humanity through dialogue from those who seek to destroy them? At what point do power structures shift to magically solve racism by turning us into unstable, fluid subjects? Blackness is a spectrum and a positionality where black and brown experience with anti-black and anti-brown oppression. We choose to blacken ourselves, identify with the race of our ethnicity, race is the concept made of coherent through the binary opposition of blackness, whiteness. We choose to identify with blackness instead of taking a flight towards whiteness, which is a tool of multiculturalism to detach and isolate our resistance. That's why I choose to identify with my blackness. India is implicated in the history of the Middle Passage. We know that Africans went to the slave ship and came out as blacks, but the exploitation of the South Asian workers overlooked embedded piece of Atlantic slaves and colonies were colonized by the same imperialists of the and birth. I'm the history and identification of our bodies are inherently tied. We understand that identity is fluid because of the history and the way that blackness and whiteness operates and shifts to oppress and subjugate us in different ways. But the fact that blackness is definitive of our experience, the fact that I am marked as a woman of color when I walk outside means that I can't suddenly instabilize. That's not something I have access to do. We were never meant to survive. Everything is controlled. Everything is ripped from us. Thus, the impact of the criminalization of black bodies stems from an anti-black system that creates a biopolitical mode of thought that works to manage life. The pathologization of black bodies degrades their value down to expendability, which justifies the state-taking advantage inflicted on our communities. Police enacted murders, modern lynchings, cutting social programs. All these legalized cultural violence that stems from the physical, structural, and psychological imposition of queer black women that excludes their life from holding any meaning. Gums 1. Death is not the limit of power. The mode of power that has shifted death to management of life, civilization, black mother, curse, content, large discourse, and the deviant threat to life and humanity, the violence, and racialized children, and spectacularity of the state's endorsement of such acts of violence, survival, and pathologization allows us to be expendability, but also in pedagogical acts, archaic violence, and forced exclusion. They try to side our segregation, but we refuse to play into the reproduction of the one enslaved anti-black world. It is an anti-black claim to say that we can move out of our identity or we can suddenly destabilize our subjectivity. We realize that they're not stable, but we see the fluidity is necessarily racialized and genderized in any other way that oppression exists. Refuse to let them exploit our labor. We were never meant to survive, yet we survived. The 1AC stands in affirmation of queer black mother and a topic affective, but this interruption is much more disruptive than the AF will ever be. Queer representation of the mothering challenge heteropatriarchal capitalism and create a disruptive energy for counter-narrative that alters the alternative to the current reproductive narrative criminality. Gums 2. Queer theory challenges reproductive race narrative, humanizes black body, black mother, queer thus social order, reproductive narrative denies agency, poor, racialized mothers, reproduce values and mark bodies in the capitalist system, warrants queer protection that we can learn to mother ourselves, runs the labor of mothering away from the reproductive narrative. Mother can be the most dangerous disruptive force reproductive narrative I've ever seen. A queer color critique centers the work of mothering, provides us with a deviant energy and a poetic interruption that threatens the reproduction of narrative heterotic capitalism. By rejecting the violence that has been historically implicated upon our bodies, we advance a future infused in self-affirmation, self-love. These types of affective mobilizations are much more powerful than rejecting order, which means that dynamics forms of community allow the black body to reconceptualize what it means to live and imagine a future outside of the current one of anti-blackness. We advance the politics of survival. We survive. We rewrite the present, create it and maintain it for our queer children, where the violence is not from the melanin of our skin or the biological sex of our bodies, where to survive does not mean to have your heart beat. It is to live, to love, to bring life to death. Thus, the role of the ballot is to endorse the debater who best performed in the methodology considers the body as the politics to expose systems of domination. The way we interact in interpersonal relations within the space determines how we engage with the world. To cut the analytic, instead we should embody our identity in our politics. It is a prerequisite to expose the invisibility of whiteness and enact policies that don't recreate modern domination. Survival must be the goal of this debate round, since A is the interruption of a narrative that says we weren't supposed to survive. B, survival is a prerequisite to action. And 3, creates the pedagogy of empowerment. Survival does not mean we have our hearts beating, but it means it's necessary to create values in our life. Let's go to the ACs. First, start on the instability. This is where we'll do the link debate. First is on the first 3 cards. The survival link. Identity is not a light switch that you can turn off and on. Well, it's not necessarily unstable to the point of fluidity. It's just not unstable, but identity is a means of survival. Ross 2000. Cultural practices serve as a glue bonding together disparate individuals and a group through an economy of pleasure. For racially oppressed groups like American blacks, such cultural practices constitute means of survival as much pleasure and they pleasure taken for identifactory cultural practice in the center of bonds enabling survival. Culturally specific manners help to perform and reproduce and will to struggle together against race and other conditions in which actually solidify identity, much less of a purpose. In fact, molded the laughter, arguing, loud talking, specifying other genders of identity, bond, or race, rarely seen as resulting in an economy of pleasure itself. Subjects may intend to stress the struggle over identity by sacrificing the delights of identification. Say the black students do this because they enjoy the process of later identity recognition. Seems to trivialize the racialized struggle to survive, yet in the reality of race struggle is that the pleasure of identification, the variety of complete ways of life back in all their groups. This is a time frame pressure means that they cannot solve identity categories. If they try to solve identity categories that clinically can make they're going to be unstable or fluid, means we will already be targeted by the white genocidal management before identity is ever deconstructed. We don't identify with our skin because we want to, because it's how we survive, create communities, and live amongst each other. Go to the next 3 arguments. This is the assemblages link. Embracing assemblages will lead to ending untheoretical potential. Envisioning assemblages allowed with post-identity possibility represents a racial preference for reworking the theory of white European males. Black feminist intersectional theory is more than capable of destabilizing the subject and creating the generative possibilities of the next experience. I solve that for all of the asked options better than he ever can. King 15. assemblages may be kind of a weapon, or embrace the concept of assemblages may be kind of a weapon, wanting acceptance, a particular kind of speech, white when subject, actual sign of entering theoretical possible and promise of posting intersectionality transferring backward black moment is that perhaps black time announced the racial black feminist thought is a concern called beyond the dominant sexually risk, a criminal general conceptual black feminist politics is useful and enables a power both emotion and heart and effects that have an ontological difference appear as a landscape intersectionality as a lens enables a flexibility and a maneuverability that as a black male activist flaws to arrange things within the realm of the law university of discipline force and outside of the report. There are three implications. First, this means that the heuristic of intersectionality is always going to be better than assemblages because it is not only the best way to one deconstruct identity but engage in a way that cannot fill up or out. It means that we are going to be winning on the current debate. B, it means that it's an epistemic indie turning to concepts like assemblages in the AC world to be authoritative context on identity as a turn towards white European men satiated whiteness, and theory three instead to turn towards black feminist theorizing who talks about intersectionality, deconstructs identity, recognizing it as flexible and fluid, but also hardened in a particular moment. That type of recognition of abstract fluidity and concrete left reality falls back for all of their offense. Thus, let's go to the role of the ballot debate. They say that the role of the ballot is projecting order words. First of all, this is only applicable to affirmatives. These have no mechanism for weighing under the role of the ballot or how any other theory can react to it. The fact that it's specified to the advocacy means you prefer mine, but even then, we look to debate as a formative space. We must insert our body into our politics. Otherwise, we can ignore the whiteness that we're drenched, ignore the type of privileges we have. Our politics informs the way that we abstract in the real world outside. If we don't recognize that we are human beings who are codified in the real world, it means that our abstract and our advocacy won't be external in the correct way in the real world. Now let's go to cut the shaver card. Go to the line 17 card where he talks about lines of flight and becoming, and he says we can't solve anti-blackness without that. The danger is that, let's be clear, it is dangerous for a woman of color to think that we can just not be coded a woman of color, or to think that if we try just to cover get shift on the codification, be treated like white men as a woman of color. I have to be much more careful who I associate with, who I trust, how I maneuver in this world. If the act defends not considering identity, past and positionality, demanding ignorance from my own examples, queer and trans people decide carefully who to come out to. Women decide carefully whether it's safe to drink at parties or not. Brown people are careful who to tell their religious practices about. It's not just about becoming fluid or moving in different lines of flight, whatever that even means. It's about engaging in our politics and finding modes of survival, which is exactly what the NC is about.
Okay.
It's the reason you're debating.
So you didn't read this
Schaefer speech.
What?
Schaefer and speech. I did read survival. The explanation wasn't there, but just the tags.
Did you read Survival Must Be the End of Debate?
Yeah, it was like I read the first sentence on each one.
Okay. Where's the Schaefer thing?
Very bottom. Oh, just kidding. That's just on my doc. Never mind.
Oh, okay. CX, ready? Okay. So you say survival link identity is on a light switch you turn off. What is your? So let's clarify.
Sure.
What is the negative view of the subject?
Negative view of the subject?
Yes.
Sure. So we use the heuristic of intersectionality.
So what does that mean?
Through surely, intersectionality recognizes that there are multiple facets of oppression that work on individual bodies. It's not just race or identity, and it's not just a blank blob, a subject that can do whatever it wants, right? We exist between the margins of oppression that function to code us in the way that we are codified in society.
So the way we are codified in society. So is this like a sort of a para-ontological thing? How the way society imposes?
A para-ontological thing.
Sorry,
I don't know
sorry.
what
Let me
that means.
clarify. Is it a way? So is your argument that we should view identity in the way society imposes that identity on the subject?
No, the argumentation is that we are codified in the way that society views us. We have to create modes and strategies of survival to live in a world where we are criminalized and
So why is the
pathologized.
app not that survival strategy?
First of all, the affirmative has no recognition of the way that oppressive structures operate in the way that we
Why?
can be. You don't mention it. You don't talk about it at all. It's not
So
a
it's
link.
a link of omission.
It's not a link of omission. And even if
Wait,
it
where
was,
do I not mention?
Sure. Okay. Yes, it is. That specific link, the one I just mentioned that I didn't read, is a link of omission. But the only reason your affirmative advocacy works is because of that omission.
What
which
is
means
the,
it's
sorry,
relevant.
clarify the omission again. I kind of.
Omission is that
What the omission was, not literally. Yeah. Were you saying that? Sorry, continue. What's
What's
the
the
omission?
question?
What is the thing I'm omitting?
Sure. So you assume that we can exist fluid. Our identities aren't prescribed by things that are codified to us on society, correct? The omission is that you don't recognize the way that we are codified. So it's not even an omission. It's a very clear criticism of the heuristic that you're using, assemblages.
Okay, so what's the warrant in the king card?
Sure. So there's two warrants in the king card. The first one talks about it's an epistemic indite of the way that assemblages function. First, it begins to describe.
What is your view of an assemblage?
Sure. So I'd say an assemblage is something that is able to take on different histories, interactions, affects in a way that coincides and interweaves together.
All right. So why is there an epistemic indite to the way assemblages work?
Sure. So first, the argument in the card says that black feminist theorizing, i.e. intersectionality, has been a heuristic that works for us to function and survive in the world. That's the C argument to the card I read. But the epistemic indite comes from like turning to concepts like assemblages. When European white men come in and say, hey, your theorization of identity is wrong, let me actually explain to you how your life works, here's an assemblage. That's the type of co-option that I'm talking about. That epistemic shift towards European ideals is the criticism.
Okay. Then can you explain what the role of ballot means?
Sure. The text of the role of ballot is to endorse the debater who best performatively and methodologically inserts their body into the politics to expose systems of domination. It has a couple of implications. It means that we have to recognize the way in which we are codified in society and use our identity to, one, recognize the privilege we have, or two, use that identity to disrupt the current modes of domination that exist now.
Okay. 5 minutes starting.
I've been sick.
I feel like I've been consistently getting better.
No, it's rough.
Things go around there.
I hate that because you know I'm pretty sure we'll wake up tomorrow for shit.
Okay. 2:43 left. Let me just put it on top of the F. Okay.
Sorry.
You're good.
We could like definitely stop for
No, I've been like this all day. Woke up coughing blood. No big deal.
Oh god. Sorry, I'm sending you. Alfred just stopped working really quick. Okay, just in the top of the F. So the order is new off. Okay, stand back. The F, the K. Okay.
Give me a second, it's loading.
Let me know when you're good, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Good? Oh, you good?
Yep.
Conceded one error theory is legitimate, no 2 in our RVI, and the 1 error theory is dropped the beater. Also, you conceded fairness always, so extend that if you can't evaluate the epistemic value of the one entity, there's a fairness violation which outweighs on strength of link, so it's conceded also outweighs your ability to extend your value to test the truth of those claims. Now, new interpretation. If the negative must concede the actual bound in its contextualization, the one entity, the violation, they make this contestation renew separate rule about standards versus grounds. For sure, all the AC cannot force to speak for divine starting point debate. Rule about conversation makes one entity this useless to change the question of what we are doing. Also, switch to debate solves all their offense. They win their debate, when they're out, they can IFC solves all their abuse since IFC forces traders to explore by forcing them to debate under cells or grounds, keep burners because any arguments in yours win. Outweighs on reversibility, the one entity front loads with a new rule that other abusive positions, the one has no tools because everything is used to an arc and recover. Also, you can also use competing interpretation because reasonable is arbitrary and self-serving. You can just set up, you can just set an arbitrary, but then arbitrariness outweighs because it causes dimension to take debate out of debater stance. Now, F. Extended to lose evidence. Subject cannot be reduced to a certain feature, i.e. only be considered a subject under a condition. The subject exists in time, meaning thinking away determines the subject by affecting it. There are times things like reason or just one ability and embodying the subject. How can you claim that one ability determines the whole subject and the embodied subject? For example, you cannot take one gumbo flavor and once you know, like one gumbo flavor and a gumbo machine and say it tastes the same for all the flavors, which also indicates the first Ross link, because it proves that even if identity is on a switch, whether this form of identity is constituent, you conceded that this is the only constituent model, the constituent model subjectivity, which means that it proves only accessible one, which in turns out your argument also say you're also the king of the Russell argument also doesn't follow my argument. My argument is that we should not we do not have some fixed identity, whether we have to like, or rather we don't understand how society imposes identity, whether we should not be accept that we should not accept that imposition and accept that we're fluid under that imposition. Now the Semetsky, I'm not going for the Semetsky evidence, but now your king evidence first this is flexibility, and this flexibility is not flexible enough. The proves the absence model of instability is just how far we should go. Second is not epistemic and because the all the evidence I'm going to proves that we have our histories and other affective investments in the subject proves we cannot conform to the white male subject. They were all the evidence specific and the level of the card itself is a response to the king evidence. Third, there's just some bastardization and some assertion that their co-option will be inevitable, but this also just links just as much as the one because the white male subject could just co-opt some sort of model, some sort of intersectionality, but the role of the evidence actually more specific why we are a rejection of that comparison because we don't have some essentialist majoritarian subject that we can stabilize as the white male subject. So you can the role of evidence as stable subject makes critique impossible with any transcendent view makes takes empirical features of the subject and treats it as a genetic background. Now, also you can see the Musumian D&G evidence, which warned that we should not have some sort of stabilizing view of language. Now, I'm not to go over the Common Law evidence. Also your response to the Common Law evidence. We need some sort of figure out we need to focus on how our bodies impose on society, but all the extensions of the framework take this head. Also I'm not going for the Klein evidence, but you can see the Williams evidence, which is the model of free speech. Assumes some establishment of common sense, which determines good or bad speech, which is bad because there's that establishes some privileged white male subject to compare to another critique. First, even if it's true that the app doesn't do that, it's crucial in enabling condition to insert ourselves into politics, and it just assumes that acts doing that. It assumes that the assertion of your body will be picked up as a meaningful or violently barred from the space. Second is no link. I'm performing in an embodied way because there's no distinction between doing that and not doing that. I'm standing here forwarding a concept, which is the connection of my performance. Third, term to the app first mothering can be a retrograde of good ideas, but you will produce the wrong subject. Absent the app having a space of instability that says make sure that the alternative works. You don't just assert your performance. It's only good aspects of mothering. Like whenever you take a subject, but in a certain performance, there's a risk that you are duplicating the impression you are supposing by recreating the subject. Based on that, third, fourth, permanently do the app because no matter how good you think you should care about the universal trying to violently suppress and stabilize. This means permits a prior question between acting and performance because if it's a diagnosation, the first stage 5 perms do the app. On the opposite, there's no genuine assertion of mothering. Well, affect it's not a neutral political stance, whether it's an intensive caring speech. The shape evidence proves that the app is a prior question to affective mess, and also no link. The app question the distinction between conceptual analysis in these bodies. The app is events of my body doing the conceptual analysis here in my advocacy. Also, you cannot say that your critique has a different end goal of debate other than the theory of extensions because you can see out of the app this end goal must account for some fair violation, otherwise there's no way to engage in end goal. Also, you don't even know that end goal is epistemically a viable level of violation, which was conceded in the app. Those are the spike and one.
Before we start prep, can I just see all that?
Oh, did I not flash? You have to close the doc. Yeah.
Is the analytics here?
Yeah, it's on the top of the doc. You have to close the app and open the email I sent. My bad. I thought.
No, you're good.
Oh, Jesus.
Starting prep.
sure.
Really bad cough.
I think it's bronchitis. Because it got really bad when I like smoked a cigarette on Wednesday with a cold. And that's kind of how you get it.
Really?
Yeah.
What happened with the cigarette?
I just smoked one when I had a cold. It was a terrible idea.
When you get a cold, you smoke a cigarette and you get bronchitis?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
Or if you smoke like kind of heavily. I've also had it before, which makes it easier to get it again.
Really? Are you reading anything new?
Order will be, we'll start on gums, so the roll of the ballot of the night, and then go the AC and then the fan theory.
So, okay, AC3?
Yep. And did you read all 6 responses on it? Ready? We were never meant to survive, but where we survive does not mean where we have a heartbeat. We still survive despite the impossibilities that are present in our world. Which means the role of the ballot is to endorse the best performance and methodology and insert their body into their politics to expose system of domination. There is no other way to enact survivability except this role of the ballot. Debate is a formative space, the way we interact, interpersonal, our performance, communication, goes abstract in the outro. This goes dropped in the last page, only often as theory, but we'll get rid of that later. Look to how we should utilize the concept of communication performance to insert ourselves into our politics. Is the only way to create the type of advocacy that allows us not only advocate in the future, but expose the invisibility of violence. This can turn the internal link to fairness, because advocacy skills only way to realize what is fair by having good advocacy skills. Also contribute link to education, because we define what critical skills is critical education based on advocacy we gain from debate. Creating more advocacy skills are possibilities for critical education. The impact of criminalization pathology to the queer black woman extend the methodology of queer black mother and queer black representation. The mother and child is a heteropatriarchal anti-blackness allow us to survive, which is going to be key in the round. It doesn't matter if the AC, all of it is good. Survival is a necessary prerequisite. This goes dropped throughout the entire round of speech. Even if he's winning the role of the ballot, or that I can't extend my role of the ballot, means that you don't look to it, because survival is a prerequisite to his role of the ballot as well. There's 3 reasons why. It is 1A, the interruption of a narrative that says we weren't supposed to survive. When we survive and we're told not to, it means that we disrupt the type of motives and the type of scripts that are imposed upon us. B, survival is a prerequisite to action. Cross-apply the argument on the role of the ballot. And C, creates a pedagogy empowerment. Survival does not mean having a heartbeat, but it creates a politics of self-love, self-affirmation that allow us to not only, one, motivate out of the type of assumptions that he's talking about, to create our own world that he wants us to, but we cannot do that independent of the next strategy. It means that you always prefer the alternative. And let's go to the 6 responses he made. The first 2 arguments, he tries to no-link himself, but the links aren't specific to the arguments he made. The links are on the AC flow, so you don't even link to the argument, but even then he says that you assume the insertion value picked up as meaningful. The fact that we are inserting our body into our politics, we don't assume it's meaningful. It's how we have to debate, because we are codified as people who are oppressed already. That means that these 2 arguments go away. On the perm, first of all, don't give him credence on the perm if you can't exactly articulate what it looks like, but even then go to the office on the perm. All the links are going to be just as to perm, but one perm is cultural appropriation. View the perm through the filter of Rachel Dole's, that they corrupt the perm by promoting white fluidity and breaking down the boundaries between women of color and white women. They cannot suddenly have an understanding of anti-blackness and say we can do that as well as this. It doesn't work that way, because it's just appropriating the type of argumentation we're trying to engage them. But even then too, we can spill upwards for them, but they can't spill downwards. We can theorize we can start from a starting point of race and theorize in terms of racialized assemblages. We can't start in the abstraction of the AC and then move down towards anti-blackness. It doesn't spill downwards. It means that the NC is always going to be prerequisite, not only to the perm, but the perm is going to be disadvantaged to the NC. And 3, this is not the type of argument that you can perm. It's specific queer black mothering, specific to queer black women, means that he cannot engage in this type of survival and love and self-affirmation in the way that the NC does. It means that the perm doesn't even function. It fails specifically in this round. Let's go to the AC advocacies. First, he tries to extend the loop by saying that the subject cannot be reduced down to what it exists, but extend the argumentation roster that talks about how we cannot claim our identity is unstable. It's a time frame question. If we look to identity as something that we try to destabilize right now, we'll already be targeted and placed out of the way. This argument here is that it's not word on word, it's not fixed identity. We don't accept how society imposes it to us. The argumentation here is we cannot suddenly get rid of the codifications that are imposed on us by society. We can't just magically become a blob that's independent of identity. Ross specifically talks about how our identity is a claim to instability. We recognize that things like race and gender aren't stable. They change throughout history. They're fluid throughout time, but those structures still always exist. It means that we cannot just suddenly move under them and avoid the type of identification that he wants us to. That's only available to people who are white men. Look to the second link that talks about the assemblages link. There are interactions that he bases here. He tries to extend the argument that is a bastardization language. He doesn't look to assemblages, rather he tries to convert the D&D language through a language. He says that he prefers intersectionality to treat generic backwards, but doesn't interact with the argumentation or the warrants within the cards that we talk about. Extend the King argument, first of all, talks about how it's an epistemic indie because we already theorize race and subjectivity and intersectionality. That is the second argument. But the fact that we're trying to take a European conception of man, of how we should respect identity and inserting it into the round is not only one co-option, but two, it is an epistemic indie because the fact that it functions the way of someone else's ideology as opposed to our own politics goes against the rule of valid. And second is the argument of intersectionality. Intersectionality necessarily breaks down the type of identity you want. We are doing the affirmative. We are a contextualized version of the affirmative to the real world. We understand how race can be contextualized in the abstract of abstraction, but we create real world contextualization of what exactly it means to break down identity. Intersectionality recognizes that we're not just black or we're not just women, but there are multiple facets of oppression that create the type of identification, codification that exists us in society. It means that the only person who's actually, one, breaking down identity is the negative, and two, contextualizing is real world is negative. Those are going to be not only links, but disadvantages and voting issues in this round. Go down the flow. He's dropped the danger disadvantage, so extend the danger disadvantage specifically on the Klein 17 card. He's dropped the argument that it's dangerous for us to think that we can suddenly be co-opted out of our identity. If I go out and not recognize that I'm a woman of color, I have much more to be careful who I associate. If our identity is definitive of how we act. Look at the examples that I give, how trans and queer people don't come out to everyone, how women don't drink at every party because they don't know how it's going to result for them, how brown people don't release their religion to everyone because they could be shot for facets of Islamophobia. The fact that our identity dictates our actions means that we have to recognize it before we can engage in any form of destructuralization or destabilization. We are a necessary prerequisite to the way assemblages or even his idea of not fixed instability operates in the affirmative. That argument goes dropped throughout the whole speech. That's the entire story of the negative, and he's not addressing how the affirmative even functions within the scopes of identity. Means that you're automatically voting neg there. Next, on theory. Counterinterpretation, the negatives must not conceive the as world balance contextualized in the 1AC standards. Look to turn ground world balance functions the same way as a standard. You can weight your AC under my world balance, which solves back for ground. You can also exclude my atoms with your world balance, which gives you more options in time in the one area, which means switch side doesn't solve because I need to contest your world balance when it's already shitty too. Look to the outweighs arguments. This has been clearly disproven. There is no reversibility because the fact that rule of balance is abusive options means that the affirmative rule of balance can be abusive, but there's no way for the negative to contest it. If we have to completely concede to the rule of balance, it means that you look away. His argument and also critical engagement. It's better for critical engagement if you have more roll to balance, which in the offense means that he doesn't have any reason to negate. For those reasons, I urge you to vote negation.
True 37 1. Your turn on ground was that roll the ballot factors some ground. What was that argument?
Say that again, sorry.
What was your first turn? What was the turn made on ground?
Yeah, so there's 3 there. First, roll the ballot functions in the same way as a standard. You can weigh your AC under my roll the ballot, which solves back for your ground. Second, you can exclude my offense with your roll the ballot. Third, switch side doesn't solve because
Okay, yeah. Okay. So the order is. Oh, theory then the. Okay, sorry. Okay. Good.
Yep.
Here's the overview for the round. The two minds did a massive mistake on the theory debate when they conceded competing interpretations and reason why fairness outweighs the epistemic world. They just have one argument on the critique proper that they control the internal range of fairness, but that'll be easily handled. So first, extend the fairness outweighs because you can't evaluate the epistemic value of the entity. I believe there's some sort of fairness violation because you're not going to argue is true, but I could not adequately respond to that. You've also continued the way arguments why it outweighs on strength of linking out outweighs your ability to use your roll out to outweigh my roll, to outweigh this interpretation because it proves that because it tests the legitimacy of actually using the practice of your roll balance in the first place, which means that if you believe that any risk the critique roll out outweighs the interpretation you've continued to specify specifically, you have that takes that out. Now my interpretation, so it's the world of my ground. So here's the offense of the function. First, you've conceded the competing interpretations, which means that's a question of which interpretation has net better offense of competing interpretations. So if I went to the ground standard and what my interpretation at least has net more ground on my interpretation, it'll be easy at belt. So extend my ground standard, how preserving all the app because my interpretation preserves all the app because I'm forced to speak first and find the starting point. The roll out transition makes all the app useless and moots it because it just shifts the question of what we're debating about, especially when it's an instance of a critique roll back, because we just shift to like some sort of performative offense, which obviously the app's offense doesn't link to, which so it takes out your first response that the roll about factors from ground, because obviously it doesn't, because it's a question of which ground has better, or which world has better ground. Obviously my interpretation allows us a world from better ground because your argument is that we can exclude like some ground, however we get a vast majority of ground under my interpretation, which means that's that better under competing interpretation. Also doesn't factor any ground. It's just you have not made an internal link why my specific offense functions under different rollouts or different ways the judges just define offense to determine an obligation to judge it. So obviously a lot. So a very minuscule amount of the one is he's going to link it. If it's vastly different rollouts. Also you say I can preclude some offenses as a standard. No, you can't. Or a step point answer the question of how much ground I get. My interpretation says I don't exclude any offense, which is obviously better than competing interpretation. B step point is of course by the argument also the argument why I made applies here why the argument I made above applies here why the excluding offense does not make sense or it's not better because obviously you can just exclude the app offense way more. For example, with a different roll of the ballot, obviously my offense is going to be net worse under the how the critique links function for, so that'll always give me a disadvantage because you mooted all the offense the app is set up in the app, which means that I'm always at a net worse spot. Now you can see the weighing argument, which is the reverse. Would claim that one to keep front loads or front loads with a new roll of the ballot and other abusive position because when there's no tools, which always any extension of your terms, because it proves that even if there's some form of competition, the argument is that it's too late or this competition is not enough because one entity can just front load with an abusive instance. Also, always your app roll about it can be abusive argument because it proves that even if there's a risk that it could be abusive, the argument is that the one entity's ability to just front load and collapse in 2 hours is way worse than the app's ability to be screwed over. Also, you say you should look to the weighing arguments, but no weighing arguments you made. Also, you say app roll can be abusive. That's just potential abuse because it could be abusive. However, might even not establish specifically why this round my roll about is specifically abusive, which obviously doesn't matter under competing interpretation because there's infinite things that could be bad in the first place. Also, you say critical education, but you consider only fairness as voters. No, and you're not warranted why the internal link to critical education. No. So there's a bunch of floating pieces of offense. There's my ground internal link, and there's like 3 pieces of standards. They say switch side the debate's been solved, but obviously that's not like I don't need to win that. So ground that way is competing interpretation, fairness, top of your ground.
Good shot.